Hi there, and welcome to Out There, a Cryptid podcast. I'm Josh, and today we're heading to one of the bloodiest battlefields in American history, where something with glowing green eyes has watched the dead for more than a century. But the real question is it a ghost, a demon, or a cryptid? Or something older, something stitched together by war, grief, and Southern folklore? We are discussing a cryptid called Old Green Eyes. Let's dive in. Today's episode is a really special one. It's part of a very cool team-up with the Green Eyes Festival down in Chickamauga, Georgia. We will be digging into the history, the legends, and the sightings. And stick around till the end to hear all about the festival. We'll get into the Old Green Eyes right after this. Before we get into exactly what people are seeing, we need to talk about the land itself. Because Old Green Eyes isn't just some standalone legend. It's rooted in a place, and that place is Chickamauga Battlefield. Tucked into the wooded hills of northwest Georgia, just south of the Tennessee border, the Chickamauga and Chattanooga National Military Park doesn't look like a horror movie set at first glance. It's peaceful, wide open fields stretched into dense forests. There are winding two-lane roads and stone monuments poking up out of the trees. But there's something about the atmosphere, especially when fog rolls in, that feels off. Like the ground remembers something that you don't. Chickamauga is the site of one of the most violent and brutal battles in American history. In September of 1863, Union and Confederate forces clashed here over the fate of Chattanooga. It was supposed to be a stepping stone for the Union to push deeper into the South. But what happened instead was chaos. Soldiers fought in the woods, the fields, and the underbrush, often unable to even see who they were shooting at. By the end of it, over 34,000 men were dead, wounded, or missing. It's the second bloodiest battle of the Civil War, right after Gettysburg, and the scale of that violence left a mark. Not just historically, but spiritually. One of the most chilling details? After the fighting stopped, the bodies weren't immediately buried. For days, they were left out in the sun, in the rain, in the silence of a battlefield that had only just gone quiet. Locals and soldiers alike talked about the eerie stillness that followed, about the way the land seemed to hum or breathe or mourn. There were even reports almost immediately of strange figures moving among the dead, watching, scavenging, waiting. Chickamauga Battlefield was later designated the very first national military park in the United States. It's preserved now, dotted with statues and canyons and war memorials. But even with the manicured grass and visitor signs, something still feels heavy there. If you talk to people from around the area, rangers, historians, even skeptics, they'll tell you the land never fully healed. And maybe the spirits didn't either. So, who or what is Old Green Eyes? That's where things get tricky, because what makes this legend so eerie isn't just what's been seen, but how many different ways it's been described. Over the years, Old Green Eyes has taken a number of forms, and each one seems to reveal something a little different about the fears and imaginations of the people telling the tale. Let's start with the Headless Soldier. This is one of the oldest and most repeated versions of the story. It shows up in local ghost tours, in Civil War folklore, and even in the accounts of park rangers. The idea is simple and chilling. A Confederate soldier killed during the Battle of Chickamauga, decapitated, some say by a cannonball. Now, his spirit roams the battlefield searching for something he'll never find, his missing head. The only thing left to mark his presence? 2 glowing green eyes floating just above the ground, moving through the fog. Sometimes he's described as fully dressed in uniform, his body intact but his head gone. Other times, it's just the eyes, silently watching from a distance. This taps into a common battlefield ghost motif known as the cannonball head trope, where decapitation becomes a kind of unfinished business that keeps a spirit earthbound, kind of like the Headless Horseman. But there's a more sinister version of Green Eyes that surfaced in the 1960s, often referred to as the Ghoul. This version is less ghost story and more urban legend, with demonic overtones. According to this telling, nurses stationed at makeshift field hospitals during the Battle of Chickamauga claim to have seen something horrifying, stalking the wounded and the dead. It looked human, but not quite. It had glowing green eyes, sharp features, and small horns curling from its forehead. And it wasn't mourning the dead. It was feeding on them. The story goes that one of the nurses, terrified but faithful, raised her fingers in the shape of a crucifix and rebuked the creature in the name of God. The body of the creature vanished in a burst of energy, but the eyes remained, floating in the darkness. Ever since, the story claims those glowing green eyes are all that's left of the creature, cursed to wander the battlefield forever. Whether you believe it or not, it's a version that adds a religious and spiritual twist, giving old Green Eyes more in common with demons than soldiers. Then there's the Bigfoot angle, because of course there is. This one's been gaining traction most recently and blends cryptid lore with the battlefield legend. People report seeing a massive hairy humanoid figure with glowing green eyes and, curiously, white fur. Not the usual brown or black most Bigfoot stories describe. This one's pale, like a ghost. Witnesses say it runs across roads near the battlefield or hides behind trees and old stone buildings in the park. It's tall, broad-shouldered, and eerily quiet when it moves. Some believe this is a completely separate creature that just happens to live in the park. Others think the Bigfoot-like figure is old Green Eyes, just interpreted through a more modern cryptozoological lens. It's possible that decades of overlapping local lore have blurred the lines between ghost story and cryptid encounter, creating something in between. There's also the black cat theory, which is weirdly compelling, especially if you're from the region. Every few years, people around North Georgia and Tennessee start reporting sightings of so-called black mountain lions, big cats that aren't supposed to exist in this area, let alone in solid black. Some believe that these are just misidentified animals. Others are convinced it's something else. And over time, this legend has gotten folded into the old Green Eyes mythos. And finally, we have the Ghost Bride. This one is arguably the most romantic, or the most heartbreaking, depending on how you look at it. Legend has it that a young woman dressed in white was left at the altar. Her fiancé never showed. In despair, she ran to the top of Wilder Tower, an 80-foot stone monument inside the park, and threw herself from it. Now, people claim to see her walking the streets near the tower in her wedding dress, pale and quiet. Sometimes they say she appears inside your car as you drive by. Others claim that on Halloween night, if you're brave, or stupid enough, to be there at midnight, you might see her leap from the tower all over again. And here's the twist. Some say she's wearing a pair of dazzling green earrings when she died, and that their shine is what became the eyes. This version reframes Old Green Eyes as a woman in grief rather than a monster, which adds a layer of poetic tragedy to the whole story. What's fascinating about all of these versions, Headless Soldier, Battlefield Demon, Albino Bigfoot, Spectral Panther, and Jilted Bride, is that they don't cancel each other out. They coexist. They layer. It's like the land around Chickamauga can't quite settle on what story it wants to tell. So, it tells them all. And maybe that's the point. Maybe Old Green Eyes isn't one thing, but a reflection of the battlefield itself. Haunted, confused, ancient, and alive with grief. And that grief didn't start with the Civil War. These stories didn't grow from nothing. They grew from a place already steeped in shadow. Before the battlefield, before the bloodshed, before the ghost stories, there were older whispers in the trees. More on the Old Green Eyes right after this. Long before the echoes of cannon fire and the spill of wartime blood, the land around Chickamauga was already cloaked in quiet mystery. According to Cherokee oral tradition, and hinted at by scholars like James Mooney in Myths of the Cherokee, a spectral green-eyed presence was said to inhabit the gorge near Chickamauga Creek long before the arrival of Europeans. In those stories, this being wasn't inherently evil, but a guardian spirit or harbinger, emerging from natural caves or mist-laden hollows to signal something monumentous, an approaching storm, a tribal conflict, or ominous dreams. The exact origin of these tales remains murky. Cherokee lore was conveyed orally, not written. There's no single scroll or manuscript that names the spirit, but still, generations of storytellers passed down warnings. If you saw those glowing eyes reflected in creek waters or shifting fog, something beyond the everyday was stirring. One researcher points out that the word Chickamauga itself possibly derived from the Cherokee term meaning river of death, may reflect the deep unease this land held even before Civil War bloodshed. What's compelling is that decades later, this green-eyed presence persisted in the lore, ready to be absorbed into the tragic narrative of the battlefield. As the Civil War descended onto this older, pre-existing mythic terrain, the Cherokee spirit and wartime suffering became inseparable. Whether the spirit was called a guardian or harbinger or simply ancient, it laid the groundwork for what would become the layered legend of Old Green Eyes, a haunting born of both native wisdom and battlefield grief. Now, we did touch on this above, but the earliest wildly cited sighting of Old Green Eyes dates back to the immediate aftermath of the Battle of Chickamauga in September 1863. While it's difficult to verify exact dates or sources, much of the lore was passed down orally. Civil War soldiers on both sides began reporting strange encounters almost immediately after the fighting ceased. According to these accounts, as the smoke cleared and bodies laid strewn across the battlefields, survivors began to notice something, or someone, moving among the dead. Multiple soldiers described seeing a figure with glowing green eyes weaving silently through the mist, stepping over the fallen. The figure was often said to be shrouded in black, unnaturally tall, and with a gait that was too smooth, too purposeful for a man walking among corpses. But what stood out most, what stuck in the memories of those who saw it, were the eyes. Bright, luminous green, glowing even in the low light of dusk. Some soldiers believed it was a fellow soldier gone mad. Others thought it was the devil himself coming to collect the souls. The fear was so intense that in some versions of the story, men refused to sleep alone or venture into the woods at night, even long after the battle was over. There were also whispered stories of Confederate medics and battlefield nurses who claimed to have seen a similar figure, this time more monstrous than man-like. These early descriptions didn't call it Old Green Eyes yet, but they are considered the foundation of the legend. A dark presence with glowing eyes, moving the unnatural calm through a scene of absolute horror. And unlike other ghost stories where the figures fade, this time the green-eyed specter seemed to endure, reappearing in different forms across the decades, always tied to the same haunted stretch of Georgia soil. This post-battle apparition, rooted in trauma, death, and confusion, is widely considered the origin point for what would eventually become the enduring legend of Old Green Eyes. And fast forwarding a little, in the early 1970s, 2 separate nighttime car crashes within Chickamauga battlefield were widely attributed to encounters with Old Green Eyes. In each case, the drivers reported being startled by a pair of glowing green eyes that appeared in the middle of a park road, just as they were driving. Both drivers swerved sharply to avoid hitting what they perceived as a creature or apparition, ultimately crashing into trees or the embankment. Though no one was seriously injured, the suddenness and similarity of the incidents quickly fueled local legends. As Tim Kent, a Civil War historian and blogger, later recalled, quote, 2 car accidents have been blamed on Old Green Eyes. The creature is standing in the middle of the road with those glowing green eyes. They both swerved the car to avoid hitting the creature and struck a tree. End quote. These weren't isolated stories, though. They were part of a growing pattern, a slow-burning legend that was beginning to grip the area. And then, not long after, came one of the most unsettling personal accounts. In the summer of 1973, a young couple parked along what locals called Lover's Lane, a secluded stretch near Chickamauga battlefield, known for its hushed ambiance after dark. According to the tale unearthed by Spooky Appalachia, the pair had just settled in when they noticed an unsettling glow in their rearview mirror. At first, it seemed like headlights, but when they realized there was no car, horror set in. 2 vivid green eyes hovered silently in the mirror, unblinking, wrenching a paralyzing dread into their chests. The couple bolted from the vehicle and sped away, but the eyes remained, tailing them through the fog until they finally escaped the park. The incident swiftly became local lore, recounted at late-night gatherings and on regional radio segments in the years that followed. Although no formal newspaper articles from 1973 have surfaced, the story gained traction across oral history circles, and it was eventually featured in ghost tour narratives and paranormal podcasts, like us. Well, skeptics suggest it may have been an animal reflection or torchlight playing tricks. For the couple, the encounter was real and remains one of the earliest documented modern sightings of Old Green Eyes in action. But if that account raised eyebrows, the next one would turn heads, because it came from someone whose entire job was to protect and preserve the land. In the early hours of a fog-draped morning in 1976, seasoned Chickamauga Ranger Edward Tinney, a 31-year veteran who served as both historian and chief ranger at the park, had one of the most compelling encounters attributed to Old Green Eyes. Around 4 a.m., while walking near Glen Kelly Road to check on Civil War reenactors camped nearby, Tinney and a fellow ranger came upon a tall, shadowy figure standing at the edge of the road. It was over 6 feet tall, clad in a long black duster, with stringy, waist-length black hair. Tinney's heart raced as they watched it stride slowly toward them. Then, as the creature passed, he'll never forget the eyes and the grin. Quote, "The eyes I'll never forget those eyes. They were glaring, almost greenish orange in color, flashing like some sort of wild animal." End quote. The being paused, then vanished instantly into the night when a car's headlights swept across the road. Tinney later reflected that, quote, "Wherever there is a great suffering, people always see strange things." End quote. The sighting cemented Old Green Eye's reputation among both park staff and local lore. This chilling incident came from a credible and experienced ranger, and stands as one of the most compelling eyewitness reports tied to the legend. But the strange encounters didn't stop there. They continued, quietly, decade after decade, moving from battlefield paths to tucked-away hollows, passed down in whispers and warnings. In the summer of 2001, a local woman and her grandmother decided to explore Chickamauga Battlefield, a place they'd visited since childhood. According to the account shared on Spooky Appalachia, they wandered down to a dried-up creek, a place with overgrown stone outcroppings and hidden caves that seemed to swallow the midday sun. As they paused to admire the landscape, the granddaughter, who was in middle school at the time, spotted movement near the tree line. It was skinny, almost skeletal, as though woven from dried grasses or hay, and it stood eerily still. But what froze the blood in their veins were the eyes. Two luminescent green orbs, flickering like captured fireflies or lightning bugs. They glowed with a quiet, malevolent intelligence. The figure seemed to stare at them for what felt like an eternity, then simply vanished into the woods. Instantly, the grandmother, who had grown up hearing the legend of Old Green Eyes, grabbed her granddaughter's hand and insisted they leave immediately. The unnerving encounter stayed with the young woman for years, shaping her weariness of the dark woods and reinforcing the idea that the battlefield housed something more than a memory. And just a year later, that fear would echo again, this time on the lonely stretch of road near one of the park's most iconic landmarks. In 2002, a woman driving along the winding road near Wilder Tower, the 80-foot stone monument also known as the Wilder Brigade Monument, had a brush with something decidedly unearthly. As she navigated through unusually heavy fog, an unnerving silhouette emerged on the roadside, standing, an estimated 7 feet tall. The figure was utterly dark, obscured by mist, but most chilling. 2 glowing green eyes pierced the gloom each time it turned its head toward her. She stopped the car, paralyzed with fear. But the creature remained rooted in the shadows, its luminous gaze fixed on her. After what felt like an eternity, it slowly stepped back into the fog, disappearing as if swallowed by the night. This eerie encounter stands out for its combination of a striking cryptid-like form, the hallmark glowing eyes, and the iconic hilltop tower backdrop, cementing Wilder Tower as one of the most haunted locations in the Chickamauga battlefield lore. A lot of these sightings come from years past, but that doesn't mean this creature still isn't out there. Because only 2 years ago, a Reddit user, Active Educator 8846, had their own sighting. So, the only time myself and a group of friends saw green eyes was around 1:30 in the morning. It was back in my drinking days, but my friends and I had heard the story, so we decided to camp at the battlefield the night before Halloween. We decided to go hunt down green eyes, so we take off into the woods. No lights, just 5 people stumbling into the chill of the morning. We are walking for about 10 minutes, and it opened up into a pasture area. I kid you not, we all stopped at the same time. There, in the middle of the pasture, was a translucent figure of a man. You could see the tree line on the other side right through this thing. The eyes are why he is called Green Eyes, because that's exactly what they were. Pupils were bright green. Like, if you look at a dog's eyes from a certain perspective, they have this eerie green / see-through look. But there he stood, while the hair on our arms stood. It took one step towards where we were, and not a word was spoken. We all turned around and sprinted back towards our makeshift campsite. One of the guys, Jake, tripped on a root and fell down, but nobody stopped to help him. We got back, packed up our stuff, and left. But Jake never showed up. We called the cops and they did a search, but he was never found. We still don't know where Jake is to this day. Some say old Green Eyes got him. Others say Jake got away and got into the insurance game in Wisconsin. Now, despite how many people have claimed to see it and how long this legend has been around, there's actually no solid photo or video evidence of old Green Eyes. No clear images, no verified footage. The sightings are consistent and detailed, but the proof? Still just stories. Most of what's out there are artistic renderings or blurry photos that could just as easily be shadows or tricks of the fog. Some folks say the encounters happen so fast or the fear hits so hard that taking a picture isn't even on their mind. Others argue that whatever Green Eyes is, it's not meant to be captured. At least not easily. So for now, it lives in the same place most good legends do. In memory, in stories, and in the space between what we know and what we think we saw. And maybe that's part of what makes this so compelling, because even without photo evidence, people still believe. They still feel something out there. The fact that no one's captured old Green Eyes on film doesn't kill the story, it gives it room to grow. Because this is more than just a cryptid legend. It's a living folklore ecosystem. The Green Eyes is right at the heart of it. Over the years, the legend has evolved, twisted, and folded in on itself, pulling from ghost stories, cryptid lore, battlefield trauma, and even ancient Cherokee beliefs. Green Eyes isn't just one thing. It's a southern folkloric blender. Part headless Civil War ghost, part demon-like ghoul, part roadside Bigfoot, part Black Panther, part cursed bride. Every version adds another layer. Every retelling shifts the shape a little. It's like the land is trying to explain itself using whatever stories people are ready to tell. You can see the fingerprints of older legends all over this one, especially in the Cherokee stories that predated the war. That green-eyed spirit, sometimes seen as a guardian, sometimes as a harbinger, was already here long before the soldiers marched in. And when the battlefield filled with blood, that existing legend didn't disappear. It just absorbed the new grief. It grew heavier, meaner, hungrier. That's how folklore works. It mutates to match the moment. And when you factor in the very real history of the land, thousands of deaths, mass graves, bodies left to rot under the Georgia sun, it's no wonder people feel something out there. Whether it's supernatural or just inherited fear, the energy is there. You walk those roads at night, past the fog and the stone towers and the rustle of trees, and your body remembers what your mind forgets. That's the power of a good story. It haunts the place long after the facts are gone. More on the old Green Eyes right after this. So, what does it mean that we create stories like this, especially in places where so many people died? There's something almost inevitable about legends forming in spaces like Chickamauga. When the land holds that much suffering, it doesn't just go quiet. We feel that weight even generations later, and when we don't have the language or tools to process that kind of trauma, we build myths around it. That's where Green Eyes comes in. Maybe he's a ghost, maybe he's a demon, or maybe he's just the shape our collective grief took when it got too heavy to carry. Some people see him as a protector, a spirit watching over the battlefield. making sure the dead aren't forgotten. Others see him as a warning, a symbol that the land is still restless, still raw. And then there's the darker interpretation, that Green Eyes is a manifestation of guilt, of unfinished business, of something we buried deep in the dirt and hoped wouldn't come crawling back out. This kind of legend isn't unique to Chickamauga. You see similar stories in places like Gettysburg, where people talk about the Lady in White, a mourning figure drifting through the fog. Or Antietam, where visitors claim to hear the phantom drummer tapping out rhythms near Burnside Bridge. These spirits don't just scare, they echo. They show up in places where violence and loss have left a permanent mark. And in each case, these stories people tell feel less like inventions and more like responses, cultural coping mechanisms wrapped in shadow and folklore. So maybe Green Eyes is more than just a cryptid or a ghost. Maybe he's a mirror, held up by the land, showing us the things we've chosen not to look at directly. War, loss, guilt, fear, mysteries. Or maybe, just maybe, he's still out there, watching, waiting for us to understand what it is we keep seeing in the dark. Here's what I love about this case and this cryptid. Number one, it has Native American lore steeped right into it. So, as you know with me, I think if the Native American people had seen something or had talked about a cryptid, I believe it more inherently because they lived with the land and on the land. What I love is that their interpretation wasn't some sort of demon, but a protector of the forest and someone warning them. Now, what I think could have happened is that when the Civil War began, the land was destroyed, completely soaked in blood, forming what could have been a protector into something more ghoulish, more demonic, mad at the world that was created right on its soil. So, out of all of these stories, what do I think? Well, the Civil War ghoul is probably my favorite of them, but I think that it's possible all of those possible stories all live within this land, all on the same battlefield. An albino Bigfoot, a bride doomed to walk the streets in her sorrow, a big cat. I think all of these things can be true at the same time and not be old Green Eyes. I think that entity might be something completely different. Now, you'd think a story like this, shadowy figures, glowing green eyes, battlefield ghost, phantom brides, would be the kind of thing people whisper about and then try to forget. But in Chickamauga, they've embraced it. Every fall, the legend of Old Green Eyes takes center stage during the town's annual Green Eyes Festival. And this year marks their second year hosting it, happening on Saturday, October 18th, 2025. The festival will take over Gordon Street in downtown Chickamauga, bringing the legend to life with a celebration of local folklore, community, and good old-fashioned spooky fun. You'll find live music from local bands, great food, and artist vendors, panels, and storytelling sessions led by local historical and folklore experts, and a ton of other weird and wonderful surprises. It all takes place just steps from the battlefield itself, in the heart of the land that birthed the legend. Whether you believe in Old Green Eyes or not, the festival keeps him alive as part of the land, part of the culture, and part of the ongoing mystery that still clings to Chickamauga like morning fog. For more information, you can visit greeneyesfestival.com or follow them on Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok at Green Eyes Festival. We'll also leave the link in our show notes, where you can grab merch, register for the Green Eyes Gallop, and stay up to date on all things Green Eyes. So, what do you think? Is Old Green Eyes really out there? Be sure to follow us on Instagram at OutThereCryptids for episode posts, updates, and more. Join our community on Discord, where we dive even deeper into the mysteries we explore here on the podcast. The link can be found on our Instagram. And if you're loving the show, consider supporting us on Patreon. As a patron, you'll get exclusive perks like bonus episodes, early access, and even surprises. See you next week.